Yes. Now, this done by stealth and without legitimate authority. Yeah. Now, I think this is just one example of wiretapping that is prohibited. Yes. Now, there could be other crimes of the conduct, the unauthorized, the clandestine. Oh, now stealth is an interesting word because let's say surreptitious. Yes. Entry without warrant. Now, well, my concern is there's another word called surrender, the act of yielding to another's power or control. Yes. Now, you could voluntarily surrender. A defendant surrender to law enforcement officers without the need of for their pursuing the defendant in any further way. Yes. Then there's the right of giving up of a right or claim, the release. Yeah. Now there was a certain form that you issued, Christy Miller. Yes. I thought it was coercion. They told you that I had a weapon. Yeah. But there's also the surrender provisions of the protection order itself. Now, I mentioned the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Yes. But there's also the concept of taking something without authority. Yes. It's a kind of a lawsuit. Yes. See, this protected person that didn't appear in court. Yes. Christy Miller. You issued a weapons surrender form. Yes. That you would have had the authority to take the personal items of those that are citizens. Yes. Without any actual due process. Now, it's a little different lawsuit. When you use a form that says surrender, it means that you have to give to the individual. See, the restrained person must surrender all firearms and other dangerous weapons subject to this order, but not limited to the following attached sheet if there are more than listed. Yes. Now, this surrendering of these weapons, when you use a forgery, Christy Miller, and there is no petitioner's signature, the actual taking of the property of citizens without due process, it's a kind of a lawsuit. Yes, yes, yes. Now, I actually didn't have any dangerous weapons, but there is this big issue. It's different than search and seizure. It's the actual having to give you something that you have no legal right to take. Yes. Now, this time that you arrested me, and I wasn't in Sequim, Washington, yes. And then you had me arraigned, right. And then you wouldn't admit the evidence, yes. For the violating of the restraint provisions of the protection order, right. Where the protection order has a number of restraint provisions, yes. And then that permanent protection order also has some surrender, yes. Now, this was the responsibility of myself to inform you. Yeah. hmm See, it says here, if your relationship to the victim is as intimate partner and effective immediately, and continuing as long as this order is in effect, you may not possess a firearm or ammunition under federal law. Now, I'm not actually wanting to buy a firearm or any ammunition. Yes. But the issue is, it's different than the Second Amendment. It's this thought that you can take from a citizen without any due process. It's kind of like if I had my sons, I would have to surrender them to you without any due process of law. Yes. Now, I made absolutely sure that you understood that I did not want you to have them. And you took them without any due process of law. So I've had to surrender them to you without any due process of law. Oh, now when you do that kind of a thing, yes, you are actually kidnapping and holding hostage. See, custody means that it is within my possession. Yes, it is. Now, restrained, yes. Restrained, yeah. Restrained, ouch. Excluded, yes. Vacate, ouch. These bold words in there. Now, as we look at it, on July 8th of 2011, you issued a protection order where I wasn't a resident, my sons weren't residents, and my wife wasn't a resident. Oh, she had made up a story on Guam that I'd committed domestic violence and child abuse. Yes, yes. And at the time of us living at the Guam Airport Hotel, they were in my custody. They were my personal possessions. So I'm their father. Yes. And when she abducted them, you issued a court order that gave custody to her. Yes. And you made me surrender my custody. You see the idea? When you take without any actual authority of law, yes, you've obligated me to surrender what there was no actual legal right to take from me. Now, see this right here? Yes. Uh-huh. This is page 4 of 6. Prohibit weapons and order surrender. Yes. The respondent must not obtain or possess any firearms or dangerous weapons or concealed pistol license. Yep. And turn in any firearms or other dangerous weapons and concealed pistol license as stated in the order to surrender weapons filed separately. Yeah. Now, you actually filled out this additional form. Yes. Yes, yes. Now, the findings. The court, check all that apply, must issue the above orders and order to surrender weapons because the first restraint provision is ordered above. Mm. And the court found on page 1 that the respondent had actual notice. Yes. Respondent represented a credible threat and was an intimate partner. Yeah. But this is a protection order. Yes, it is. The petitioner didn't sign it. The petitioner wasn't there. I wasn't a credible threat. We had been an intimate partner, and we are still married. Oh, oh. See, this idea of the county issuing court orders where you decided to attach an additional order to surrender weapons, which means that I was obligated to surrender something that I didn't have ownership of. Yes. But it actually violates the right to own property. Pope. Different than the right to keep and bear arms. There's this idea of me having the right to own something. Yes, 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 yes. Now let's say I sued you for this. Okay. I'm suing you for issuing a court order that obligates me to have to give you ownership of something that belongs to me. Oh, oh, oh. And then when you issue that dissolution of marriage, yeah, I told you that I did not get any notice of court hearings. In fact, I went online and looked, and it's still there. Now, this idea of ownership, of having custody of the 5 minors named, yes, I didn't get any notice of court hearings. I didn't get a dissolution of marriage. The marriage certificate was issued from the United Nations. Yes. Now, let's say I called the United Nations. I'm not actually going to call, but let's say I called them. Yes. There's a court in the United States of America, yes, that issued a dissolution of marriage that didn't just take custody of my sons. They obligated me to surrender custody of my sons because they did not give me any notice of court hearings. They did not have reciprocity. And me surrendering custody of them was 100%. Are you absolutely sure? You obligated me to surrender my sons because of child abduction. My wife made up a story. She had me put in jail on July 2nd of 2011 at 7 a.m. in the morning. Yes, she alleged domestic violence and child abuse. Oh, I didn't commit any domestic violence or child abuse. I did 7 hours of parenting classes. Yeah. My record is expunged. I gave you a copy of the expungement order. Yes. And then I gave you a copy of the actual marriage certificate from the United Nations. Now, this idea of surrendering, let's see here. Implied surrender shown by an actual tenant and landlord. Yes. Leased property. Oh, surrender of bail, surety, delivery of a prisoner is released on bail into custody. Yeah. Now, let's say you're released into custody. When you have custody of an individual that's been arrested, that's similar to a parent having custody of children before they're removed from the custody of the parent. Now, you're in law enforcement, okay? You're a police officer, you're a sheriff, and you take somebody into custody. What was I not in before you arrested me? Oh, your custody. That's right. That's right. What happens when you take me into custody for the false allegation of violating the restraint provisions in Sequim, Washington on December 30th of 2000? See, you have to actually have evidence that somebody committed a crime to take them into custody. Now, I've heard it said in this county, well, we'll let the judge sort it out. The removal of myself, having custody of myself, yes, because somebody said I was in Sequim, ouch, or somebody said I was in Brennan, oh, or somebody said I was in Sequim, ouch. The taking of an individual out of their individual custody and putting them in your custody, yes, is an actual crime. Now, the taking of children from the custody of their parents, yes, without any protections of law, is a crime. Yes, it's known as kidnapping. Kidnapping. Now, my sons are in the custody of somebody, yes, and you took them from my custody without me receiving any notice or opportunity to be heard, yes, without any state jurisdiction to issue the protection order, yes, without any actual